Measure our success not only by the battles we win, but also by the wars that we end, and perhaps most importantly, the wars we never get into. My proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker and unifier. That's what I want to be, a peacemaker and a unifier.
He's doing it in Gaza and Ukraine. But what about Iran? Will Trump go to war with Iran, or will he smoke the peace pipe with the Iranians? Trump himself broke the news that he's written a letter to Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
Something's going to happen one way or the other. I hope that Iran, and I've written him a letter saying, I hope you're going to negotiate, because if we have to go in militarily, it's going to be a terrible thing for them.
You wrote a letter to the Khomeini?
Yes.
When did you send the letter?
Yesterday.
He's also spoken about a potential peace deal with Iran.
Very, very soon. You'll be talking about that pretty soon, I guess. And hopefully we can have a peace deal. You know, I'm not speaking out of strength or weakness. I'm just saying I'd rather see a peace deal than the other. But the other will solve the problem.
It follows his 4th February executive order imposing maximum pressure on Iran. Now, within 2 days of signing it, he had put sanctions on Iran's oil network, all in a bid to prevent Iran from going nuclear. For good measure, Trump warned Iran against assassinating him.
That would be a terrible thing for them to do, not because of me. If they did that, they would be obliterated. That would be the end. I've left instructions. If they do it, they get obliterated. There won't be anything left.
Remember, in August of 2024, the US had charged a Pakistani national linked to Iran with plotting to kill Trump. A few days ago, as this map shows, a US drone flew close to Iran's airspace. And just last month, the US flew its B-52 bombers near Iran in a show of force. That's not all. In his first term in office, Trump did a few things. He withdrew the US from the Iran nuclear deal, ordered the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani, signed an executive order banning the entry of Iranians into the US, and sanctioned Iranian companies and individuals suspected of being involved in Iran's missile program. So Trump has a history of animus towards Iran. Enter Vladimir Putin, Trump's BFF. Now, Putin wants to give a return gift to Trump for wanting to end the Ukraine conflict pretty much on Moscow's terms. Putin has offered to mediate a truce between the US and Iran. Bloomberg was the first to report it. The Kremlin has since acknowledged it. Russian state-run TV channel Zvezda quoted the Kremlin spokesperson as saying that Putin had agreed to mediate between Iran and the US in talks concerning nuclear weapons.
Iran is наш партнер. Iran is наш союзник, и мы
Iran is our partner, Iran is our ally, and despite whatever happens on other tracks, we will develop our relations with Iran. President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, thinks and is convinced that the problem of Iran's nuclear dossier must be resolved exclusively by peaceful means. There is the possibility to return to the basic document, etc. Of course, Russia, being Iran's ally, is ready to do whatever possible to facilitate the peaceful solution of the problem.
для того, чтобы способствовать этим.
Now, Moscow says it discussed Iran with the Americans in Saudi Arabia, and that the Russian position really is that this problem of Iran's nuclear dossier should be solved exclusively by peaceful, political, and diplomatic means. Russia, of course, has deepened its ties with Iran since the start of the Ukraine conflict. it signed a strategic cooperation treaty with Iran in January. So Putin has the credibility and leverage to broker peace between Tehran and Washington, D.C. Iran stands to gain from such a peace deal. It will, for instance, get immediate relief from economic sanctions. It will get to export more of its oil. Its economy will get better, which in turn will improve the Iranian people's living standards. Now, you'd think it would make Iran happy, but no, it's not. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is not too kicked about it. And taking his cue from his boss, President Masoud Pezeshkian has changed his stand. He now opposes it. Ordinary Iranians don't want to become a bargaining chip in Putin's dealings with Trump. Banners such as these have come up in Tehran, warning of the dangers of talking to Trump. An opinion piece published by Tehran Times reads, the Trump-Zelensky encounter wasn't just an international incident. It was a gift. It was a stark, undeniable reminder that our destiny is in our own hands. Let us heed the warning, cast off the shackles of dependency, and forge a future where Iran is the master of its own fate. The time for illusions is over. The time for self-reliance is now. Kayhan, whose chief editor is appointed by Khamenei himself, warns Moscow not to fall into America's trap. Now, Iran has been expanding its production of highly enriched uranium, and some Iranians are becoming vocal about pursuing a nuclear weapon, which Israel is vehemently opposed to. Now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel would, quote-unquote, finish the job of preventing Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons if Trump supports the idea of destroying Iran's nuclear facilities. The Times of Israel newspaper reports that Putin's offer to mediate between the US and Iran is deeply worrying for Israel because Trump's increasingly cozy relationship with Putin could undo Israel's plans for pressuring Iran to abandon its nuclear ambitions. And how does the Arab world view these developments? Well, Saudi Arabia, for one, has already normalized its ties with Iran. In fact, if reports are to be believed, the Saudis themselves had offered to mediate between Iran and the US. So, will Trump take up on Putin's offer to mediate a truce with Iran? Or will Trump back Israel against Iran? Opinion is divided in Washington, D.C. Elbridge Colby, Trump's nominee for Undersecretary of Policy at the Pentagon, says Iran's nuclear ambitions could pose an existential threat to the U.S. and that military action may be necessary to stop it. But National Security Council spokesperson Brian Hughes says the U.S. will talk to its adversaries and allies alike. So, in conclusion, does the U.S. have an appetite for war after Afghanistan and Iraq? And for someone who sees himself as a peacemaker and worthy of a Nobel Prize, will Trump take Putin's bait? We'll know soon enough.